Hey guys, Probable1701 here. Today we're going to talk about why The Green Death is awesome. Now, The Green Death is a six-parter from season 10 and is the final story with Jo Grant. She departs at the end of the story. There's a lot going on in this story. It really does fill out its six parts really well. It's paced very well. And it has a lot of really good political messages that are done well. People will complain about the modern series, about all the politics that are in the modern series. And it's not that there are politics in the modern series, it's that they are badly executed in the stories that they are in, to the point to where they're just getting browbeat. They're pretty much browbeating you over the head, or they're talking down to the audience like the audience is stupid and can't pick up on subtlety. Now, The Green Death does a lot of political things. One, the obvious, of course, is the toxic waste and stuff, which causes the maggots. As The Green Death is the story people talk about, the one with the maggots. So it is talking about the dangers of toxic waste and the side effects it can have and how it can damage the environment and the ecosystem. But it's not overbearing. It doesn't detract from the story, and it doesn't feel like it's browbeating you over the head with that point, even though it's a strong contributing factor to what's going on. Another political point is everything with the nut hutch. These people who are looking for organic solutions to problems like the fungus cake, eating vegan and all that. More environmental stuff. Another political point there, kind of living that little hippie life that they're living. And which is, the Nut Hutch is based on a actual place too, Barry Letts was saying. 'Cause I rewatched this again, but I was rewatching it with the audio commentaries on the season 10 box set. And I watched the episode 6 with Russell T. Davis in there too, but I watched all 6 episodes with Katie, Barry, and Terrence, and I absolutely love the fact that we have these, even though Terrence and Barry are no longer with us. I'm so grateful to them that they did so much extra interviews and audio commentaries for Doctor Who, that we have their thoughts on things, their opinions on things, and how they reached the ideas that they did for things. Very grateful for that. Another political thing we have going on here, if you want to talk about politics, another point it's making, is with the robot, the boss, the machine that's controlling everybody. This is very much, as Barry mentions in the audio commentary, talking about the dangers of machines controlling people. We saw this before in Doctor Who with the war machines, another great Doctor Who story, and how people should be in charge. Machines should never be in charge. People should always be in charge, and the dangers of creating artificial intelligence and how that can go too far. Basically like Skynet, a lot of what the boss is trying to do, the computer is called the boss, is trying to do here and take over all the other machines across the world, very similar to Skynet, what Skynet did in Terminator 3, and of course, from what we know, it did hearing stories from 1 and 2. So it's like pre-Skynet, Skynet before Skynet, as this episode aired over a decade before the Terminator came out, but it's definitely, when you think of the potential, what could happen if the boss had succeeded, it's definitely got Terminator vibes to it. Again, it's like Terminator before the Terminator. And the Doctor manages to prevent all of that, of course, and save the day. Manages to prevent Skynet from taking over, basically. And all 3 of these political points are done well without them being shoved in your face. And the fact that it's not just one point it's trying to make, it's balancing all 3 of these political points. While also being a very entertaining story. There's a lot going on here. Yates is getting some screen time. Even a lot of the guest characters are getting some screen time, with of course the professor is Stephen Bevan, since he's Joe's romantic interest. And also the guy who runs the plant gets a good amount of screen time. It's nice to see what goes on with him, as the boss is mentally controlling a good bit of the workers, much like in the war machines, the machine can control people, basically brainwashing them to the point where it makes one self-terminate. A lot of good stuff here. The maggots are really well done. I have to say the special effects for the maggots look really good with the worms and the mouths and the sound they make when they're like, you know, a little sound they make. The jaws with the squirrel or rat jaws or whatever it was looks really, really good. I mean, the special effects for the maggots look better than some of the stuff in the modern series, especially the early scenes of the modern series. That holds up really well. And a lot of the scenes where they're moving around, for the most part, look pretty good. Even when they're CSO'd in, look pretty good. Now, some of the CSO in a couple places, like when the doctor's driving the car through the maggot fields, it's obviously CSO. But again, it's like, it's 1973 technology, you know, color separation overlay. You have to kind of accept it for what it is. It looks fine. My only real thing, effects-wise, that takes away is the giant fly. That whole bit with the giant fly looks a little rough. Gets a pass because it's classic Who. Looks a little rough. That whole little bit with it flying looks... Yeah, that's really the only thing I can ding the story for. It looks really bad, but the rest of the story is really solid. Great performances all around. I really love... Everything building between Joe and the professor is done really well. Especially, as they point out in the audio commentary, when you remember that this story was originally only seen, you know, one story a week for 6 weeks. So we got to see the relationship build over 6 weeks. So it's almost like taking, you know, like the relationship grew over 6 weeks. It's not like now where you can just go watch, you know, all 6 stories, one right after the other on a DVD box set or a Blu-ray box set. So they had time to get used to Cliff and to grow with Cliff Jones, as Joe got to know Cliff Jones and grow with Cliff Jones. And I like watching their relationship slowly bud. The glances, the looks, the sitting next to each other, the holding hands, the almost kissing. Just watch, and then, you know, watching her determined to get his maggot for him, watching him realize that she's left to go do it, and him panically go after her. It's really well done. John here is so good. John is such a good doctor. You know, anytime people rank their doctors and John Pertwee's not in the top 5, my first thought is always, you need to watch more John Pertwee. John Pertwee is such a good doctor. He's the only doctor that plays it like that straight that I think pulls it off as well as he does. Because most of the doctors that go for that more serious doctor, like Hartnell, Collin, Capaldi, tend to rank lower on my list, you know, midpoint or lower. John's the only one, because I tend to prefer the more eccentric doctors like Troughton, Baker, Tennant, stuff like that. But John is really high on my list. He's the only one that plays it very serious, very straight, that I have that kind of affection for that I do. And he's so good here. He does so much with his face. John is one of those doctors, or really he's one of those actors, but his doctor especially. He says a lot just with his facial expression. You can tell what he's thinking by the look on his face. Other doctors are also really good at this. Patrick Troughton was really good at this. Tom Baker is really good at this. David Tennant is really good at this, where you can tell what emotion they're going through simply by their facial expression, the look they have on their face. John's really good at that. Like when he catches Stuart, Bevan, and Katie Manning about to kiss, you know, and he's kind of like, what am I interrupting here? He looks very concerned about it. And then how he kind of pulls the professor out of the room to talk to him. And you see that those little moments where he's getting kind of more and more concerned that she's kind of like, you know, the bird leaving the nest. Even at the very beginning of the story when she doesn't want to go with him to Metebelis 3, he tells her, you know, all the time and space I'm offering them to you, and she doesn't want to go. And he seems a little off-put, but he's okay by it. To where at the end, when they agree to get married, that scene when he's like, I'm sorry, I think I'm needed on the telephone. You know, he seems very disturbed by this, very, very disturbed, not quite sure how to emotionally deal with it. It's not often you see the Doctor, I think, this emotional, especially like the third Doctor. In that scene, I love the finale scene when he leaves, because he does it without saying a word. Again, this boils down to his performance. John Pertwee pulls off being the Doctor better with 0 words than I think Whittaker did over her whole run with 3 seasons worth of words. He does better with no words here than I think she ever did in her entire run of the show. And again, I don't hate Jodie Whittaker. I like Jodie Whittaker. I'm just not a huge fan of her Doctor. But I feel like there's not a single scene when she has the Doctor where she plays the doctor, where she just nails being the doctor the way Pertwee does right here in this scene. Even at the end when he says nothing, he pulls that off without saying a word. Just, you get everything his doctor is going through. Keeping in mind we've had 3 years to grow with this companion. We've watched the companion grow over those 3 years. In that scene when the doctor just takes a sip of the drink and leaves, and you see Katie kind of turn around looking for him, that look she has on her face that's kind of sad, and then it cuts to that outside shot of him walking past the dogs to the car, which Barry even notes in there they hold longer than would in modern Who. They wouldn't hold the shot that long, but it looks really good that they do. You see him walk through the dogs. And it's not just John's performance. The scene is shot really well. Very good directing by Michael Bryant, who's a great Doctor Who director. Great job by the cameraman, I think the cameraman. And when he gets in the car, it switches that close-up of his face where he doesn't say anything. He's just kind of... And then he cranks the car and pulls off, and then it cuts back to the party with, Joe and Cliff dancing together and her smiling and being happy as she's hugging him. And then it cuts to that beautiful last shot. And Michael Bryant rightly should be proud of that shot. I know Barry said Michael was very proud of that shot, and he should be. With the car driving by, with the kind of sun setting and the stars coming out and the car just going by. And that's a beautiful final shot. Because it's so sad. It is. It's a very sad shot because you feel bad for the doctor. Because you could tell he's emotionally upset about this, stoically like the third Doctor is. But not just does this end the story, but it ends the season. The whole season ended on that kind of sad moment. It's such a beautiful shot. And I love that. That just, they feel like there's so much unsaid between them. And you get the impression that maybe... you always think of, most people think of the Doctor and Joe as kind of that paternal relationship. They're either really close friends, kind of a father-daughter relationship, uncle-daughter relationship, older brother, younger sister relationship. But you have to kind of wonder that if the third incarnation of the Doctor had been younger, like maybe if the third incarnation of the Doctor had been Tennant or Smith or Davison, could there have been potential for romance? Because keeping in mind that the person she ends up with, the professor, is really kind of a younger version of the Doctor. I think she even mentions that in the story. Again, I was listening mostly to the audio commentary on this watch through, so I don't remember. But I believe she even mentions in there that, when she's talking to the Doctor about Cliff, he's kind of like a younger version of you. And that could be one of the reasons why she connects with the professor so much, with Cliff Jones, why she agrees to marry with him, why they bond, is that he is kind of a younger version of the Doctor. She's so close to the Doctor and grown so close to him that when she sees a younger version of that, she connects to it on a romantic level. That could be why her and Cliff ended up together, was because, he was a younger version of the Doctor. I always wonder about that. So if the third Doctor had been a younger incarnation, there could have been a possibility of romance there. I always wonder. And it's simply the fact that just, the third Doctor was an older looking incarnation that could have prevented that from happening. Just an interesting what if situation in my head. So that's to me, that's the Green Death. It works. There's no slow points in it. There's always cool stuff going on. You have everything going on with the maggots as a byproduct of what's going on with the computer and the factory. You have some great chase scenes and running scenes in it. Got the Doctor doing some of his Venetian Aikido in it, which is awesome. Some cool brainwashing going on. You get the guy who's running the chemical plant having showdowns with the Doctor and showdowns with the Brigadier, which is really awesome. Get to see him bombing some mountainsides. That's pretty cool. And you have, like I said, the political stuff with the toxic waste, the political stuff with the nut hutch. You have the political stuff with humans versus computers, and should we make computers that are smarter than we are? Again, as Barry Letts said, humans should be in control. They're the number one thing. So it juggles all this beautifully. You have, again, a good story for the Doctor. You have a great exit for Joe that really builds toward that moment and a wonderful ending. It juggles all of these things effortlessly. So yeah, The Green Death is an amazing story. It is a well-regarded story, and rightfully so. It deserves its reputation and its legacy. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the Green Death and why it's amazing. What do you think of the Green Death, and what do you think of Joe's exit? How does it rank up there with Doctor Who exits for you? It's definitely one of my top 5. Other things to do, click the like button, click the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications so you never miss out on another video. I also have a Patreon if you would like to contribute to that. There is a link to that down in the description. That helps me out, helps me import more Doctor Who stuff. I like my Doctor Who collection, so if you have time, check that out. Most importantly, stay safe out there, and thank you for watching.